Well, hey guys, welcome to my channel in another stream and chapter 2. Working on this guy here. That is our MPC 1969 Dodge Charger that we are going to be building as the General Lee from the show Dukes of Hazzard. So, we'll run the intro. We'll get into it, okay? Okay, so we're back and we're going to continue with the build. Last time we left off working on the engine here. We're still assembling it. We're not quite done assembling it. We still have to assemble a few more pieces on it, okay? So I'll change the camera and I'll show you what I've done off camera, okay? So I went ahead and I took a saw, one of these guys here, took this saw, and I sawed the engine off of the transmission, okay? We got rid of that. So we cut them in half, took the transmission off the engine, the original engine, and took some CA glue and mounted it to our new engine. And it lines up pretty good. I wound up sanding a little bit here on the center here to get rid of that seam line, because I really hate the fact that you can see these parting lines or seam lines on transmissions and things. It really bugs me when there's an oil pan, but fortunately we don't have to worry about that with this one. But yeah, so I got rid of that line there, and so we have our engine and transmission assembly now. I did wind up putting the pulley on the water pump. I got that hole drilled out through there so I could put the pulley on. The pulley is now on nice and solid, okay? So we've got to do our crank pulley, and I still have to put the alternator on. The alternator, though, I think I'm going to glue on after we've got this thing painted. And I think actually we're just about ready to hit this with a coat of primer and get this all one solid color and get it ready for some paint. So let me just take a look and see my bits and pieces that I have left here for the engine. We got our distributor, we got our oil filter. I did look at reference photo for the oil filter to see how this is supposed to go on here, and this is going to go on in this direction like this, with the oil filter actually facing forward. It goes just like that. It's going to sit on there like that. You can see that there. So yeah, oil filter facing forward like that. That's how that goes, okay? So there's our engine and transmission. I just used some CA glue. I did have a little bit of a gap there on the side there because I didn't quite saw it perfectly straight. And yeah, so we're getting somewhere. We're almost there. I think we're about ready to hit this with some primer and to get this ready for some paint. Talking of primer and paint and stuff like that, I kind of want to get some of these other pieces out here and maybe get these primed at the same time. So I'm going to fire up my air compressor, and I think we're going to use our Mr. Surfacer 1500 gray for primer on this. I think that'll be plenty good enough. For our purposes on this, I'll be using my my PS 771 with a Creos with a .18 needle in it. Very small. Good detail. It's a good detailing airbrush. Of course, with a .18 needle, you do need your paint pretty thin. So you want to make sure you got that taken care of and have your paint thinned. This, of course, is already nice and thin. I've got this mixed maybe 65% thinner, I'd say, would be my guess. So pour a little bit of that into my cup. I do not have my other camera set up for painting, but since we're just doing primer on this right now, I don't think this is not really a painting video. This is not what we're This is not really what I'm doing. I'm not really just focusing on painting. I just want to get a coat of primer on this before we really continue, because as I add more things, it's harder to get into the nooks and crannies with the paint. So I kind of want to have it prepared and ready when I start getting more things assembled on this. So put a glove on because I don't want to spray paint my hand, and I'm going to grab a toothpick. I think I happen to have one here, so I can stick that in the transmission. And wow, that goes all the way. Maybe this would be better. Yeah, that's a little better. Now I can hold that and I don't have to spray my hand. It does make it a little hard to get in there, so maybe I do that first. Let's do that first, okay? Just do this little section first here. Get those angles in there. That I wouldn't otherwise be able to get while holding it with my hand in the way. Okay, so there we go. We got some color on the front of this engine now. So now I'll stick my toothpick in the front. Just like that. And now I can paint the rest of this. Get some primer on this. I don't know for sure, but seeing the detail on this transmission, it seems like it's a top loader 4-speed tranny. I don't know for sure because, well, I don't know. And how can you know if you don't know, right? Just making sure I got good coverage everywhere. All angles. Under a certain light, this primer almost looks white-ish, like a very, very light gray. Okay, so there's our primered engine. Okay, and I'm happy with that. That's really all we need is, okay. Engine is primered. If we can get some focus on there. Yeah, engine's primered. All one color now. Good stuff. Alright. So, I'll just put this aside here and let this dry for a minute. Actually, I'll just put it in this here. Okay. We have some other little parts that I need to make sure I get some primer on. So I'm going to be utilizing my little alligator clips to hold on to these other small parts. So I told you guys last time how I want to I want to 3D print the horns for this this car. I want to 3D print the horns, okay? And I showed you guys last time. I talked to you a little bit about 3D printing the engine and how I did that. If you watch my other video on that, you'll see. You can see the software process of it anyway. On getting these, how do you 3D print this stuff yourself? That being said, I also wanted to 3D print the horns. The horns are becoming a white whale to me. I have tried 4 times to print the horns and I've failed 4 times. They just don't want to print. The printer prints all the supports. It gets a few little things on top of those supports, but it doesn't print the horns. And so right now I'm trying attempt number 5. I have multiple horns set in different orientations to hoping that we'll have one that succeeds. Our alternator, I see I already put our pulley on the alternator. I need to remove that. It's a really tight fit to get that pulley in the alternator. There we go. Why am I removing the pulley from the alternator? Because I haven't yet determined the depth that the pulley needs to go in at on the alternator. A little bit of primer on there. That one's done. That was that quick. We've got our oil filter assembly. I call it the assembly because it's the oil filter and the adapter all in one. It's like that. We've got our alternator. Let's get some primer on this. I love the detail on the alternator. It's so much better than any kit part. You never see an alternator with this kind of detail straight out of a kit. Once that dries, I'll show you. I'll show you guys up close. Got a crank pulley here. Crank pulley and harmonic balancer. Okay. Okay, there. I have my carburetors that I need to do separate, and I also have my distributor and the wires. The wires, I just want to make sure that none of them are touching. So I'll just change the camera so you can see here. So I've pre-done the wires on this, but I want to separate them so that I can get paint in there and not have the paint kind of act as a bonding agent and glue them together. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Vern? Only you older guys understand that reference. Ernest was his name. I don't know if he started off as just a comedian or not, but had a couple of movies in the early 90s. Okay, so there we go. I got the wires all spread apart there. That way I can paint them individually, get paint on them, and not worry about it. Here we go. Now I need to glue down, I need to do something about our carburetors. So what I'm going to do, this is now dry. Good old Mr. Hobby paint dries nice and quick. Good stuff. Engine's dry. So I'm going to take a piece of tape. Let's do this. Flip this little thing over. As you can see from previous paint jobs, I've done this before. Flip the tape over so the sticky side is up. And take carburetor number 1. Doink. Number 2. Doink. Number 3. Doink. Take this pulley or whatever it is, stick that on there, why not? We could do the same with our fan blade, sure. There we go. Now it won't go nowhere when I spray it. Doing it like this does make it a little bit difficult to get. Obviously you can't get in your angles where, you know, it's facing down, but that's why we choose a side that's not going to be seen. To be facing down, right? That's right. It's perfectly right. can't really do that with the fan blade because the fan is what it is. So there you go, we got a nice little coat of primer on all of those parts. And now we're going to do our, of course I did that whole thing off camera. I'm sorry guys, I forgot to change the camera. Here. Okay, we'll do our distributor now. Get all these little wires painted gray. Pretty sure as time goes by and I'm moving these wires around and bending them and stuff like that, I am going to have to repaint them, touch them up. Almost every build I do with spark plug wires like this, I do wind up having to retouch up the wires when it's all said and done. It's just kind of the nature of the beast with my wires anyway. Because I'm using wire that's actually stripped out of regular wire. That's why. So there we go. We've got our little wires all primered up. Change the camera back so you can see them a little bit here. Now they're not copper, they're all gray now, right? Not that the camera will focus on them, but yeah, there we go. Yeah. Okay. So those are our wires. I'm going to put that over here because I don't need them right away. And I'm going to clean up the airbrush now. So you guys who are watching live, you get to suffer with me on this one. Actually, while I've got this open, I'm going to do my air cleaner too. While I've got this done. The air cleaner I printed out, it's 2 pieces. I'm just going to do this, leave it like this, and I'll paint this guy too, since it's out. Actually, my fan blade is now dry, so I'm going to flip it over. So I can do that side of the blades, and I'll put my air cleaner on there, like that. So, some primer on this air cleaner. Now would it be a little better to, because the air cleaner is going to be like, you know, chrome on the top kind of thing, it would be better to primer it in black. But the chrome paint I plan on using doesn't seem to care whether you primer something in black or not. I'm going to take that off so I can do the sides, the actual filter element part. Okay, that's done. So, as I started to say, I am going to clean up my airbrush, and you guys watching live get to suffer watching me through this. Or, you know, I suppose you could just easily click on a different channel. But I'd rather you keep watching. Keep watching me. You guys who are watching on YouTube, I'll cut it out to right about here. Okay, so the airbrush is clean. I'm draining the air out of it now. So, we're going to figure out what's next here. So, I wanted to show you guys the detail on our little alternator. Let's show you. There's probably an alternator, a kit alternator. Let's just do a little comparison of my 3D printed alternator compared to the one in the kit. Okay, let's just take a look here. Here's our one in the kit. Okay, right here. There's our alternator in the kit. Now, I mean, it's okay. You can see the detail in it. And of course, it's chrome. That's typical. There's the back side that looks like crap because it's not anything special. But there we go. There's our alternator in the kit. Okay. Now let's compare that to the 3D printed one. Let's grab that here. Our 3D printed alternator. That's the back of it. And here's the front. It's 3D printed. Way, way better detail. Much more realistic looking. That is much, much better. That I like a lot better. Okay, so we have our pulley on the alternator, and I want to see how far in that pulley needs to go on the alternator. I already have an idea, so I'll just kind of set it in like this, because it doesn't really want to go. I almost want to sand it down just a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Just kind of file it a little bit, rotate, file. You know, it was hard enough to get the hole big enough to just to even get that in there. I want it to go in a little bit smoother. There we go. Now it's not fighting me so much. Okay, so I'll stick it out and I'll leave it about that far out for now. Okay, and because I want to line it up on here, I have pushed this pulley for the water pump. That's in as far as it'll go. It's right to the back, which is pretty much exactly where it would be. So our alternator is going to line up right there. So our pulley, the way I have it, is actually almost exactly where it needs to be. It needs to go in just a little bit more to get that lined up on there. Just a little bit more deeper in there. That's pretty much lined up perfect like that. Okay, so that pulley is exactly where it needs to be, and that's what I've got. Next we have our crank pulley. That's going to go in there, and this one's fairly simple where it needs to go. We just need to line up the pulley with the water pump, which is going to be right there. Very simple, very easy. Yeah, it sticks out quite far, but that's where it needs to go. Just like that. Okay. Okay. So, but before we do anything, I don't want to put this on here because I got to paint it, right? I've got to paint this engine. And I was not originally planning on painting today, but I think that's going to be the better thing to do. So what I want to do is mask off. I don't want to paint the orange on the oil filter, so I'm going to mask it off. I'm going to put some masking tape on it. Let's just grab some masking tape here. That should be enough. Run this around my oil filter. That. Okay, so oil filter's masked off, so he's going to be ready for paint. Just like that, okay, because this part needs to be painted engine block color. I don't think there's anything else I have that needs to be engine block color except just the engine. Carbs are going to be their own color. This is not going to be engine color. I mean, this could, in theory, be engine color, cover color, engine cover color, or it could be chrome. I want to go with chrome on that. Just looks, you know, everyone loves a little bit of chrome, but we need to paint the engine. So, like I mentioned before, Chrysler 1970 Hemi Orange is what I'm using. I already shook this paint up pretty good. So we're going to do that, and which means because I wasn't anticipating painting, I shut my air compressor off. So I got to put my needle back in my airbrush. Okay. Now, like I mentioned before, these paints from Pro Scale Paints, they're all pre-thinned, they're ready to spray, which is really nice. It's very convenient. They spray pretty nice. I have used them before. They lay down nice. They're nice paints. I'll definitely give them that. But like you guys saw in the last video when I showed you this paint, there was really, the pigment really settled. I shook this up for a long time to get all the pigment from the bottom, to get it to mix in there, just to get this ready, and it's still not even really ready. Yeah. So let's put some color on our engine. We'll start off with this little piece for the oil filter. There we go. Okay. Alright, so first I'm going to do the front of the engine block so that I can put my toothpick in there afterwards. I'm not sure exactly what they use to thin this stuff, but it lays down smooth, just like, you know, some kind of Mr. Hobby paint with leveling thinner in it or something. It lays down really smooth. That being said, you do have to kind of, I have noticed that you do have to kind of build it up in layers, just because you want it to stick before. There we go. Now it can stick. Okay. Again, I'm sorry if you can't see this on camera. Where am I? I'm trying to look what I'm painting here. I've got my other camera right in the way. Sorry. Let's just shrink this a little bit here. There you go. That way at least you could maybe see as I turn this around. Get some paint on this. Again, I was not anticipating really painting this much in this video, but as I'm getting prepared to do all this stuff, it's like, oh, I have to do some painting now. Okay. One final blast, just to make sure. We've got coverage everywhere. And we're calling that done. Okay. There we have an orange engine and transmission. Now, the part of me wants to say, hey, why didn't you do the transmission in aluminum? You know, transmissions are aluminum. Well, not necessarily. Like, this thing looks like it's a top loader 4-speed, and I know from experience, having had one when I was younger. Stay calm. Hi, man. Hi. I know from experience, from having a top loader transmission in when I was younger, teenager, those things are made out of cast iron, and those things were painted the same color as your engine 90% of the time. If you didn't see one that was not the same color as the engine, it's because the owner painted it something, painted it black, painted it with silver or something like that. Those things had a cast iron casing. They were not aluminum. So we have our engine. This is going to take a little bit longer to dry. These pro scale paints take a little longer than other, you know, your typical Tamiya or Mr. Color paints. They take a little bit longer to dry. I wouldn't say they take a really long time, but definitely if you're used to paints that are dry in, you know, 2 or 3 minutes, this is going to be more like 5 to 10 minutes kind of thing, right? So yeah, it's one of those things. You just gotta you know, have some patience. That's really all it is. So I gotta clean up the airbrush now, because these paints are a little more expensive. I mean, you talk about, like, if a Tamiya paint costs you about $5, this is costing you about 10, right? A little bit more expensive. So I don't want to waste my paint by just dumping it down the garbage. So we're gonna pour it back into the jar and going to clean up my airbrush. Once again, you guys watching me live, you get to watch me do this whole thing, and other than that, you guys watching on YouTube, I'll cut it to about here. With the airbrush now cleaned a second time, we can do a little check on our paint and see how dry it is. Our oil filter is done. Okay, how's our engine? Engine is just a little tiny bit tacky, but I think we can work with it. I think as we go along, it'll be fine. Where am I from? I am from Canada. I live near Vancouver, BC. Yes. I'm Canadian, eh? Yeah. So where is the end of my tape? There it is. There we go. Sorry if I'm disturbing. You're not disturbing me at all. I enjoy the conversation. No need to apologize. So I do want to put a little bit of paint on the oil filter, but we'll do that later, okay? I'll change the camera so you can see a little bit closer up what I'm doing here, okay? Okay. So our oil filter has to go on right here, like so. So I'm gonna have to get some CA glue and attach that, okay? So let's get some CA glue ready here. My CA glue, which is slowly thickening up to the point where it's not usable. But I'm stubborn. I don't want to go to the store and buy some more. Not yet. You know, I paid for the whole bottle. I want to use the whole bottle. But as you can see, it's not exactly looking all that great in there. So let's pour a little bit in here. Okay. Don't do that. Okay. 2 times now I filled this thing too much, and then it started to pour out the edge, and that was not good. Just wanting to glue to my desk. Okay, so I'm going to get my patented little CA applicator, which is nothing more than a needle, a sewing needle, with the little loop cut off, so it's just like a little tip like this. It's really hard to see on the camera because it's so small. I don't know if the camera, as you can see what I've done with it there. I've cut the little tip off. So when I dip that in the CA glue, I get a nice little drop of glue in there, and it really helps out a lot for putting the glue only where you want it to be. A couple little drops like this, and we're good to go. Let's put our oil filter assembly on there like this, in its spot, lined up. There we go. Oil filter. Our oil filter is on there now. Okay. Now our alternator. I kind of want to paint the bracket silver and the alternator, because once I got it on there, it's going to be hard to paint it all. In fact, I'm not sure if the bracket should be silver. The alternator definitely should be aluminum. That goes without saying. And once I've got this on there, see, I'm going to do the harmonic balancer in black. We got to do some painting. That's basically at the bottom line. I got to do some painting today. I'm doing a lot more painting than what I anticipated, but that's okay. Let's get our harmonic balancer painted. Let's move our glue out of the way here. I was not anticipating, I really was not. I honestly, guys, I was not planning on painting so much today. And yet here I am, painting like everything today. Painting everything. Okay. Balancer's painted. Let's put him over here so he can dry. Since I've got the black, I might as well paint our pulley on the front here. If I'm not mistaken, Vancouver's on the ocean, which is cool. Yes, it's basically, I'd say, right above Seattle, if you know America. I don't know where you're from, but if you're in America, yeah. Right on the west coast of Canada. Getting our pulley painted here. I'm not going to paint the tip of that because, well, it's because that's why. I'm going to paint our starter black. Starters are always black. Actually, that's a lie. I've got a starter repair shop that's near my house, and almost all starters are just plain aluminum. But I'm sure back in 1969, I seem to remember my old Mustang I used to have, starter was black. Maybe it was just painted black. I don't know. Could have been. Starters nowadays, they don't bother painting them. Okay, so there's a couple of pulleys done. Now I want to do the bracket on this. We're going to do it all silverish. Silverish. You're from Russia. Oh, wow. Whereabouts in Russia? You know, my grandparents on my mother's side of the family, they were from Russia. They were Russian. Although my mom was born here, so she didn't have a Russian accent, but both my grandparents sure did. So yeah, I'm kind of half Russian myself. I guess not kinda, I am half Russian. Alright, so we need some silver paint. I'm gonna go super bright silver on the bracket. We're gonna do a nice bright silver on the bracket. Just the bracket though. Because the alternator is aluminum. I can't get over the detail on this. Just so much better than anything out of a kit. Okay, there's that. The alternator's got to be aluminum though. People say the accent sounds like Arabic. Really? I don't know. There's we've got a lot of East Indian people in our community that live around in my city, and they definitely don't sound, their accent is definitely not Russian. Okay, so I know I've got some aluminum color here somewhere on my desk. There we go. Aluminum. So this is what color our alternator is going to be. Okay. Shake that up a little bit. Sitting for a little while. There, aluminum. Okay, so I need to grab this with something I can use. There we go. Now I don't have to paint my fingers. And we'll give this a nice little coat of aluminum. So that bright silver I put on there really stands out compared to the flat aluminum this is. And I don't want to put it on so thick that I fill in detail with the paint. That would kind of be the opposite of what I'm trying to do. So I'll show you up close here. Where are we here? There we are. So there you go. See, the bracket is a shinier silver than the aluminum. Whoops! Don't do that with the camera. There we go. All right. So yeah, we get our two distinct colors, although it's subtle, right? What do you think about the idea of leaving the oil filter orange or repainting it a different color? The oil filter, from what I've seen in pictures, sometimes can be blue even, instead of just orange. It really depends because there's a few different, signature brands of oil filters out there on the market that people use very commonly, and it really depends on what you're going to go with, right? Like a Fram oil filter, Fram being the brand, Those, a lot of times, those can be white, those can be orange. It really all depends on the particular filter. Other brands like AC Delco, those are usually white. It really, like I said, it just depends on what brand. I have yet to make a decision on what color I do that filter. I could do an orange, but do a different orange than the engine block, which would then make it stand out as not being, you know, the same as the engine. I don't want to put my paint a little too thick on my pulley, so I'm just gonna do that to make sure this is dry. Yeah, it's still a little tacky on there. I painted that a little thick. Yeah, so you know what? Now that you've mentioned that, maybe I am going to do orange, but I'm going to do a different orange. Let me see. I'm going to use Tamiya's LP51 Pure Orange. Right there. If it'll focus, come on. Pure Orange, LP51. Okay, that orange. A little bit brighter orange than the engine. Let's get this mixed up. Yeah, that's a bright orange. I also have it thinned down quite a bit for airbrushing. So I might need 2 coats. There we go. Yeah, so it's orange, but it's not the same engine orange. But I am going to need a couple of coats. The next coat will cover it better. We'll come back to that. Our alternator should now be dry enough that I can mount it. Let's feel our alternator here. Yep, alternator's dry. See, that's the beauty of not putting so much paint on it. Okay, so the alternator bracket really only touches in a couple little spots. And that's really on the back of the brackets, these little pins that are sticking out. So let's grab our glue again and my patented little glue applicator and put some glue on our little dots. Okay, and just to make sure, all right. And just like that, our alternator is mounted. If not, just a little bit crooked. But there we are. Alternator's mounted. Now I don't have the pulley glued in yet. I've just put it in there, and that's where it's sitting. Okay. How long did it take you to assemble this model? Well, since it just started, it's been, well, about 2 hours total time. We're at about the 1 hour mark for today. Last time I just started assembling the transmission and put the heads on the intake and actually put those on last time. Okay, so there we go, we've got that. We're going to try our crank pulley now. This has been sitting for a while, so that's good. Now this is going to be kind of the tricky part because CA glue, you only got a moment to play with it. I can't really apply it here without making a mess, so I want to put a little bit on the end of our shaft here. And you got to be quick with this. Okay, you got to put that in there and line it up real quick, because she hardens up right away, and they're done. Just like that, done. All right, our 3 pulleys, well, sort of. The alternator is delicate, so I gotta be careful with the alternator. Let's pull this pulley out. We're gonna paint this pulley after. As long as I keep moving it a little bit. There we go. Like it or not, that's where we're at. Okay. There's our 3 pulleys. Okay. Our accessory is on there. I've got them pretty close to lined up. I think that's good enough. I mean, yeah, it's a little crooked, but that's okay. So you might be wondering, what about the belt? What am I doing about the belt? Because we got no fan belt at all, right? This is not, after all, it's not a part out of the kit, and so we don't have, you know, there's our kit fan belt right there, right? But we ain't using that, not at all. Maybe I could have used it. Just put that on there like that, right? But it wouldn't have actually lined up, because this is actually for the kit engine, which is not what this is, right? It's totally different. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take some masking tape, a super thin masking tape, and we're going to run that along here. Run a strip around there and glue it down. Now, even this is a little too thick, right? It's a little too wide for that, but it would work. We can run that around like this and get a very realistic belt, right? And then we can just glue the belt on there, glue that tape down, and call that done. Paint it black, and there you go. We get that, we can focus, get an idea of what we're doing. Yeah, just like that. Done. Okay. But I kind of need to let this now kind of sit and dry. Let that glue really take hold, especially on the alternator, because it's a little fragile. We're going to do another coat of paint on our oil filter here. Because it's just not looking right. We need some better color on it. There. Alright. So I think this is kind of where I need to leave this for today and call this kind of done. Because I want to let this really harden. Like I said, the CA glue that I'm using, I really have, I was just wondering if you knew any Russian words. Russian words. What do I know? Niet. I'm blanking. I'm sure I know 3 or 4 Russian words, but not really anything. No, I'd have to say no. Top of my head, I can't think of anything other than "niet," which I know means no. Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't know any. Just really thinking about it now, I don't know any Russian words. Okay, so like I said, I need to let this kind of sit. I'm going to paint my valve covers in black with a little bit of silver on the top of them. Other than that, I'm just going to leave them. I see that I've missed this side of the intake with my orange paint, so I think I'm going to touch that up a little bit in there. Same with this side right in there. I need to get in there. So do a little bit of touch up on this. I'm also thinking about what am I going to do about this hole in the bottom of the oil pan, because, well, that clearly needs to go, because we've got our drain plug right there. I'm not sure why I got a hole in the middle of it there. Yeah. So, and of course I need to paint the alternator pulley black. That needs to be painted. So, yeah, see, the alternator, it still wants to kind of move around. So I think I need to get a little more glue on that to make sure she stays. Yeah. So I want to thank you for watching, and stay calm. Thank you for the conversation. If you check out the links down below in the description box, you'll see links to my other stuff, like my Instagram. So every time I finish one of these projects, one of these models, I post a bunch of pictures of it up on my Instagram. So you can check out all the things that I've built in the past if you feel like it. Also, if you feel like it, hit the subscribe button and the like, and leave a comment down below if you feel like it too. That would be really appreciated. I love reading your comments. But yeah, guys, this is where I gotta leave it for today, and just kind of let this sit before we get into anything more heavy. Yeah, so I guess next time we'll maybe start working on a little bit of the body, get some primer on the body, and get that taken care of. Maybe some primer on the interior also. Let's start working on the other parts. I want to thank you for watching, and thanks for coming out, and we'll see you all in the next one.